Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Cats Track. This is my first in-person Cats Track. I am so honored to be here with Will Dove. Thank you for subscribing, liking, and sharing this with your friends. As I said, today's episode is with our friend, Will Dove. Will was born in Kitchener, Ontario, and has lived in Alberta since he was 11 years old, and he loves it here. Will tells me that he feels extremely grateful to have the full support of his amazing wife and best friend of 23 years, as well as his two teenagers. Besides his loved ones, Will is most passionate about fighting for all of our human rights, which is how I was introduced to Will. I joined the End Alberta Lockdown movement that he and his wife started, and I hope that you will too. Thank you so much for joining us today, and Will, thank you for your service. You'll find his full bio attached. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Catherine.
I'm glad you're here.
I appreciate being
here. Are you ready for the questions we sent you?
Absolutely. Far away.
Why are you doing what you're doing?
Well, that's an essay question. Obviously, there's the issue of our rights. Everything the government is doing right now is, quite frankly, flat out illegal. Their actions are a violation of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, of the Bill of Rights, on several different levels. And we did an interview very recently in our organization with a panel of lawyers who confirmed that in no uncertain language. There's also personal reasons for it. This, of course, it's destroying people's lives and livelihoods. We've seen that deaths from suicides, from overdoses are through the roof. Meanwhile, COVID is killing people who are on average 82 years old, while the average life expectancy in Alberta is 81. The all-causes mortality figures for last year show that we do not see any substantial number of extra deaths. And what little we do see can be explained by the low deaths in 2019, when the flu season was quite mild. So what you had there was a lot of elderly people who survived 2019, only to die in 2020, either from COVID or the flu or some other cause. So we're not seeing this virus is in any way anything more threatening to people than the flu. We are able to look at the information that's being provided by our own government at alberta.ca, looking at the cases and the deaths. And you can pull those charts out and you can mark on them where they put in place the lockdowns, where they put in place the mandatory mask bylaws. And it's not even a blip. It doesn't affect it in any measurable way. So what we have is our government violating our rights and freedoms in a vain attempt to save a very small percentage of the population, the 0.03%, who are at risk from this disease, destroying the lives and livelihoods of the other 99.97%. And so there's the question of our rights, there's the question of protecting lives, and then there's a personal answer to that question. And that is that in the first lockdown last spring, 3 weeks in, our teenage son lost a close friend to suicide. Lovely girl. She used to come to our house Wednesday nights to play games with my son and their other friends. And 3 weeks into the first lockdown, she took her own life. She was apparently stuck at home in an abusive environment with nowhere to go. So this has to be stopped. It absolutely has to be stopped.
And there's sadly so many stories like that. I had some of my own, which is why I feel your pain and feel I understand completely. I also lost a good friend inside of this lockdown. So very, very sad times. I'm with you. I think we have a mental health pandemic, and COVID certainly is a very bad flu. And for the ones that are getting it, it's awful. There's a really good friend of mine, Dr. Brad Thompson, that was also on Cats Track, who is an infectious disease specialist. And do you know that he and his colleagues in that same space were never asked what to do. The decisions were knee-jerk, without critical thinking, without asking the right people. And yet we're here again. I mean, this is history playing itself out again. How many times are we not going to ask the experts what they would do before we make these critical decisions?
That's a very excellent point to be raised. There's a number of studies now done by very reputable medical professionals that show that treatment with things like vitamin D and ivermectin can reduce the infection and death rate by up to 90%. Why is our government not using them? Why is our government telling us that they're doing all of this to save lives while they ignore very affordable, proven safe treatments that we know will save the majority of these people? Why is our government allowing people to die while destroying everyone else's lives?
Mhm. You'll also like Dr. Corey Deacon. He says a lot of the same things.
Matter of fact, I had a phone conversation with Corey this morning.
Oh, very good. Well, he's a
Yes.
very good friend. Do you know he's on the 3rd floor here now?
No, I didn't know that.
Hopewell Building, 3rd floor.
I've spoken to Corey, and he's talking to some of his other friends who are experts in mental health.
Yeah.
And we're looking at putting together a panel of those, put those on camera so we can talk about that impact. Because yes, I was talking to Corey this morning, and it's terrible.
It's
terrible what he's seeing in his practice.
Yeah, it's true. Well, we're all being affected, aren't we?
Yes.
I know it's certainly affected my mental health, and most people would say that I'm normally quite jolly.
Well, interesting enough, we just a few days ago, Sunday morning, we launched an unbranded website, covidsurveyalberta.com, and it exploded. In fact, we had to upgrade our server because it couldn't handle the traffic. In the intervening time, what is it? Here's Thursday. We've had over 4,500 people respond to that survey.
Wow, 4,500, and it should be you too. Say it again.
COVIDsurveyalberta.com.
COVIDsurveyalberta.com.
So what the data is showing us, and once you take the survey, you can see the data for yourself. It's all laid out in charts. And one of the things that worries me the most is that we had people responding to the question about mental health in their response to the lockdowns, with almost 6% saying that if there's another round of lockdowns, they may very well take their own lives. 6%.
Yeah, that's huge.
4,500 people. When you start expanding that province line,
that's huge. That's the
and
problem.
we had another, well, it's about 17% saying that they've had suicidal thoughts.
Yeah, sure.
At this point.
Sure. Yeah. I bet that's only the ones that were willing to admit it.
Yes. Right. Now, of course, the survey is completely anonymous. We do not ask you for any identifying information. You don't have to put in your name, your email address, anything.
Good. The 3 things that you want to share with the audience, and are there things that you would like us to get more engaged with? Now, obviously, you've set the stage for us right now. Is there other things that we could be doing? Obviously, we are writing to our MLAs. Of course, I'm getting the canned responses. I think I'm BCCing you on many of them.
Yes.
But,
yes. Yeah. Well, of course, if you haven't already gone to endalbertalockdown.com and signed a petition, please do. We're now seeing about 1,000 new signatures per week. It's just exploding. People just had enough of this. And when you sign that petition, it sends that petition to the politicians in your area, the MPs and the MLAs. So they are receiving that. They're getting those messages, unless the irresponsible have chosen to block them. So that's the first thing you can do. Once you sign the petition, you can sign up for our newsletter, which basically makes you a member of our organization. You'll be receiving communications from us on a regular basis. We have a large number of volunteer opportunities. We have a long list of various incentive initiatives that we're working on to lobby the government, to support businesses, to support people in Alberta, to get people through this and to end this as soon as possible.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. Crystal ball, 1 year from now, and you and I are having the same conversation. What do you see, looking back, happened, and why do you think it happened?
Well, Catherine, that's another essay question.
No, I'm good at those.
I wish there was a simple answer. There isn't. And the reason why there isn't is because, and I hope that some people are going to continue to listen and let me support what I'm about to say without just writing me off as a conspiracy theorist. Everything that's happening right now has absolutely nothing to do with public health. And if you're looking for the evidence, and I want to make that statement from the viewpoint of a person who up until about a month ago was myself very reluctant to think that there was anything more going on than the media's business model of fear mongering for profit and just quite frankly, human stupidity. But there is something more than that going on. You can go online, you can look into the Great Reset, you can look into it, and you can see the video with the head of the IMF sitting in front of the IMF and the Great Reset logo and talking about how this is a wonderful time to restructure the world economically. Now remember, this is the head of the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. And the International Monetary Fund, of course, is run by the private central banks. So clearly he's not talking about restructuring their economy. They're doing fine. The banks have, if you understand fractional reserve banking, they have for a very long time had the ability to generate money out of thin air. They type numbers into a computer, there's money that you and I have to pay back, principal and interest in cash. So clearly they don't want to change that. So what economy are they talking about changing? Well, ours. What's going on right now is a concerted effort to put people out of work, destroy businesses, and to make people dependent upon the government so that they can be controlled. And that's what the third payments are all about. That's an introduction to that. to give people, and by the way, you can, once again, you can go and you can look this up. You can look for the promotional video that was put out by the Great Reset. It's there online, easily found, and you will see statements in there that are going to shock you. One of those statements, and I know a lot of you aren't going to believe me until you see it yourself, so please go look it up. It says, "You will own nothing and you will be happy." And they talk about a universal basic income. Well, once you make people dependent on the government, well, now they have no control.
Yeah, that's right.
It's very, very easy to control a populace like that.
Yeah,
And I can talk about that from a personal standpoint. When I was much younger, I was a paramedic and I worked in the Gleason Blackfoot Reserve outside of Calgary. So there I am working with a large group of people who have been handed a house. They were being handed at that point in time $1,600 a month. And what did it do to them? It destroyed them. They're uneducated. Their substance abuse is rife. Domestic violence is rife. Suicide is rife. But they have no control.
Yeah, sad.
And that's exactly what these people, these very powerful people, are trying to do to all of us. So I can't imagine how to express this any more strongly. This is not about public health. This is about taking away our rights and freedoms and creating a one world government that is going to be able to control us all. And the way to fight that is to do what they did in Italy. And as most of you, some of you might be aware, recently 80,000 restaurants in Italy just opened. So enough, we had it. Within 2 days, the government backed down and ended the lockdowns. And this is the key to ending all of this. Passive resistance, civil disobedience. We're not talking about being violent in any way. We're just talking about having large numbers of Albertans just say enough. February 11th, there's a movement in Ontario that started this, but February 11th, businesses across Canada are simply going to open. We need to be on board with that, and we need to be able to support in those businesses. One of the initiatives that we have on our website that's going to be in place within the next couple of days, possibly by the time we release this, is a business directory, where any business here in Alberta that is open can go into this directory. They can fill in their information. They'll appear in a searchable directory. They'll appear on the map, and we'll be advertising this directory on Facebook to drive people to it. And people need to get out there and patronize those businesses. My wife and I were up in Mirror, Alberta on the weekend.
Yeah, Whistle Stop.
The Whistle Stop Cafe. We went up there and support, and the place is packed.
Yeah.
Albertans, like I said, have had it enough.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly enough, the owner of the Whistle Stop was in court yesterday on Red Deer, and they're threatening to arrest him. Well, arrest him for what?
No kidding.
He hasn't broken any laws.
Yeah.
In fact, it's the government who's breaking the laws, as we addressed earlier in this interview. Everything they're doing is a violation of our charter rights. And that's supposed to be the highest law of the land. The reason why those charter rights are in place is to protect us from government tyranny. The government is not supposed to, for any reason, be able to violate those rights. And that's exactly what they're doing. And when I asked one of the lawyers that I interviewed on the weekend, how are they getting away with this? Her answer was simple: because we're letting them.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have to stop letting them.
Yeah.
There are far more of us than there are of them.
Yeah.
And we simply say, no, no more. It ends. Because we do not give our governments power when we elect them. We give them power when we choose to obey them. So the simple answer to taking that power away, stop obeying them.
Protect the vulnerable and open our businesses and pools and gyms.
And anybody, obviously running this organization, one of the accusations I've received is you don't care about human life.
That's not true.
Well, let me tell you a story about that. 2016, I'm sorry, I have to stop for a glass of water here. I'm going to explain in a minute why I have to.
Oh, good.
In 2016, I had the privilege to be the national spokesperson for the Canadian Cancer Society. Sorry, excuse me. I had stage 4 throat cancer, which I had as a result of an HPV infection, which I got when I was younger. And we discovered back around about 2000 that these HPV infections were causing cancers. Mostly, the way we found out about it is it was causing cervical cancer in women. And so you get the HPV infection, and then 20, 25 years down the road, you get cancer because we're also affected the cells. What they didn't know was that men were dying from throat cancers at the same rate and from the same cause. And it's not quite that cut and dried. Men tend to get throat cancer, women tend to get cervical cancer, but it can cause cancers in other areas of the body as well for both genders. So I went on national television to talk about my experiences, and I'll tell you something, it's an absolutely horrific treatment. That's the thing that they tell you when you first go and you meet with your oncologist. And they'll say, well, there are certain cancers that have lower survival odds, but there's nothing where the treatment is harsher. And they're absolutely right. I've been a fitness nut my whole life. I went into treatment at the age of 50 years of age with at 190 pounds, 7.5% body fat. I was very muscular, very lean. In the ensuing 6 weeks, I lost 35 pounds.
Ooh.
I couldn't eat at all. After 6 weeks, it had reached a point where the nausea from the chemotherapy had finally worn off. But by that point in time, my throat was so burned from the radiation, I couldn't swallow water.
Wow.
And that was when they put a feeding tube in, and that finally stopped the weight loss. So, as I say, what came out of that awareness campaign was that there were still, at that point in time in 2016, 4 provinces in Canada that were not vaccinating boys. And keep in mind, we still have 600 to 800 men in Canada dying from this disease every year. The 3 vaccinations they get in schools will prevent 90% of those infections and therefore 90% of those cancers. Today, there's only 1 province left that doesn't, that's Saskatchewan. So don't tell me I don't care about human life.
No, that's right.
We're trying to save lives here. When you look at the suicides and the drug overdoses that are through the roof,
I'm with you.
and then you look at the people that COVID is killing, who, quite frankly, it may be harsh to say it, but you might have heard the phrase, none of us are getting out if you're alive.
No.
Everybody dies. And it's killing people who are going to die anyway. It's killing the elderly. It's killing people who are very, very sick. And once again, you can go to alberta.ca and you can look at their own statistics, and you can see that only 4% of the deaths were people who did not have pre-existing comorbidities. And because they don't break it down by age, we can be very sure that those 4% were very elderly.
Yeah, and that's terrible too. I agree.
We don't want anybody to die. And this is the other reason why we're asking our government, why aren't you using vitamin D and ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine? And there's other therapies that have been proven to work. And they're affordable and they're safe and they're proven. Why? Why are you letting these people die?
No, that there's not a proactive approach to, that's where we're back to Dr. Corey Deacon and all the things that he teaches us, right? It's, yeah, I agree. I'm really glad that you were able to join us today, and thank you for fighting the good fight for all of us. I'm delighted to be part of it, and I'll constantly tell everybody about it wherever I possibly can.
Thank you, Catherine. And that goes for everybody. Our website is easily shareable. COVIDsurveyalberta.com is easily shareable. So please get out there, join this organization, sign the petition, share it, tell people about this, because this is how we end this, is when we all act together. Yeah, we have to end it together. I agree. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Catherine. Everyone, Will Dove, fighting a good fight for Albertans. Thank you so much for joining us today on Cat's Track, and I wish you a wonderful day. We'll see you next time.